I'm Pastor Reedley Peterson, and this is Growing in Faith, our video series here at Augustana Lutheran Church, where we look at a Wednesday Bible study topic, and then we kind of give it to you, for those that can't come in person, a reflection to kind of listen to and reflect on for yourself at home. Well, today our topic is 3 chapters in Romans 4 through 6. This is what we walked through. Next week it'll be 7 through 9, so on and so forth. Well, to get us started with Romans chapter 4, I think it's important to look back at the previous verses, and I do invite you to please read through these different things. Well, just before chapter 4, we are reminded that we are justified by grace through faith. We are justified. In other words, we are made righteous, we are made clean, we are redeemed before God through faith in Jesus Christ and what Jesus Christ did for us on the cross and in that empty tomb. So then that sets the boundaries, faith being where our justification and salvation are. That then sets it up for chapter 4, because at that point in time in Romans, there was a fight between the Judean believers, which would be like the Israelites that now believe in Jesus, and the Gentile believers, the Romans that come to believe in Jesus and kind of work with him. Well, the Judean believers, many of them were saying, it's about what you do, it's the works that you do, it's the way in which you follow the 10 Commandments and be right and clean. And if you do all these things, that's how you know you are justified and righteous, because that's how our church fathers were. But Paul, in his letter to the Romans, points out Abraham wasn't saved by God through his works, but through his faith in God. In fact, God promised Abraham that his ancestors would number that of the stars in the sky. And Abraham only knew that this would come into fruition because he had faith in the promise. He wasn't given a sign. He wasn't given a necklace or some hat that said, hey, my descendants will number the generations to come. No, instead, it was through faith in the promise that he knew this would come forth, and sure enough, it did. So then in chapter 5, we get a new thing. Kind of this idea of, hey, Judean believers, remember, Abraham died by faith too. And then in chapter 5, we get a really interesting thing that keeps going with humanity and people. But I love that it starts out with this idea that who did Jesus die for? It wasn't for the perfect. It wasn't for these super faithful people that have never done anything wrong in their life. No, it's for sinners that Jesus died. It's for sinners that Jesus died for us, to erase our sins. And for that, we are justified, redeemed, reconciled with God, and given this future promise of salvation. Now, in the letter of Romans, it's a little interesting because he doesn't do it everywhere, but Paul kind of separates, we are justified. In other words, we're made right with God today. And then salvation is something we experience in the future when we are with God when Jesus returns. But that's not too big of a deal. But again, and this happens throughout Romans, there's a stress on obedience of faith. Being obedient to the faith you are called to, and what does that do for you? So this is when Paul kind of writes out over a few verses, comparing Adam and the first sin to Jesus and the correction that he made in his. And one of the big things, again, he stresses that he's been stressing since the first chapter, is Jesus' obedience of faith unto death, so that through our obedience in the faith we know we die and rise with Jesus. Now, one of the things that's been combating Paul in Rome is this message that, hey, we're saved, we're all good. We don't have to do anything else. We are justified, so we are good to go, right? When you say good to go, you mean, I don't have to do anything else. But that's not true in this instance. He actually combats this. You see, in Jesus Christ, when we have faith in Jesus Christ, we have a new life in Jesus Christ. And as Christians living today, we are called to walk in newness of life. This is a term that Paul likes to use. He thinks of life as a pilgrimage, right? And we're walking along a path. And the path we are called to walk along, now that we are redeemed, justified, and reconciled, now that we do have that promise of salvation, is to walk in newness of life. In other words, to do the things that are of God, that are of God's will, to do the holy things, to live holy lives, to not get caught up in sin and death, but instead to live holy lives and to walk in newness of life. Now, within this is the promise that we do have a power to reject sin as Christians. We do have a power to live holy, set-apart, faithful lives. And a bigger question then hangs over, if we have the ability, then why don't we do it? Is it because of something wrong with the system? Is it because our baptism didn't count? Is our faith not strong enough? Well, that comes into chapters after this one. So it's something to chew on, to think about. If we have given through faith in Jesus Christ the power to reject sin, why don't we do it all the time? This is Pastor Reed with Growing in Faith. Next week you get chapters 7 through 9. I look forward to seeing you then. Take care.